Our next speaker, okay, he looks like somebody I used to know. I still know his brother, but Adam Tescher with the Department of Public Instruction. He's going to come up here and talk about school district mill levy changes and the 60 mill gap funding process. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Again, my name is Adam Tescher, School Finance Officer with the Department of Public Instruction. Just going to go through a few of the changes and how they affect. It's been good to hear these discussions of the valuations and when the final numbers come in, because those will all play into some of these gap funding processes that we have to implement for this upcoming year. I will be the first one to break the rule a little bit, and I'm going to actually start on House Bill 1369. And just because we have school districts and counties here, I thought it'd be important to note in the in lieu of property tax category in our funding formula, the homestead and veterans credit were always included in lieu of property tax. One of our goals going into this session was to align the taxable valuation that the school district or that the county sent to the Department of Public Instruction and send to the tax department align. So if a county has filled out that state form number 9150 with the taxable valuations and the mill levy reports, we always had the gross taxable valuation, then you had to put the veterans and credits to get the net, because we didn't want that veterans and credit homestead valuations included in the taxable value and in the in lieu, because every dollar that's reported to DPI impacts the state aid that's going to go out to school districts. So we don't want to, in essence, deduct them twice. So going forward, when we have that spreadsheet that we send out each fall with the in lieu of property tax deductions, you will no longer see the homestead and veterans credit on there. And our state form number 9150, where we collect the taxable valuation, we will just be doing that gross taxable valuation number rather than getting those veterans and credits pulled out, essentially, veterans and homestead credits. Again, we are still going to collect it, but the goal is to compare our numbers with the tax departments. If we can get those equal across all 53 counties, we're hoping we can just do one property tax collection. One thing to keep in mind for school districts, when we post taxable valuation in Finance Facts, we've always done that net taxable valuation, but because of this change for the 25-26 funding year, you're actually going to see the gross taxable valuation in your worksheet. So they're not going to match what's in Finance Facts and what's on your funding worksheet because of this change, and it'll be that difference of the veterans and homestead credit valuations. So there's really one significant change to school district mill levies. The general fund mill levy has historically been capped at 70 mills. This was split into two different mills. We have the general fund, which 60 mills, which will now mirror our deduct in our funding formula. And that is split between, and then there's an additional 10 mills. So again, the overall 70 is still there. It's just now split into two different categories. They did make a note when they added this that the new 10 mill levy may not be considered new property for that exemption. So because it's just a split, that is not considered new growth, and that will be included in that 3% cap that school districts levy. The idea behind this, it's pretty straightforward. If a school district was levying 70 mills, it's a straight split. You'll have 60 in your general fund and then 10 in your other one. If a school district would have levied 65 mills in the past, it's essentially going to be 60 mills in your general fund, and then that 10 mill general fund will be at 5. And the reason we need to make sure we get that 60 in there is so we get to when we calculate the gap funding, we can do it accurately and ensure that school districts are maxing out that levy to be eligible for their funding. I know there's a presentation after this regarding caps. I did just want to note here as well that tuition levy was exempted from the cap. The tuition levy is used for when school districts have to pay tuition. Maybe they have a student that's placed into a residential facility outside of their school district. There's also the allowability that school districts can levy for tuition for students in grades 7 through 12. And so that cap would have been challenging for a school district like Mapleton that's seeing a lot of growth. They're paying a lot more tuition because they don't have a high school to Central Cass or to West Fargo. And so if they had been capped on what they can pay in that tuition, it would have created significant challenges for that district. And then the gap funding. So the gap funding was put in place because in our funding formula, we pay school districts $11,000 per student. That $11,000 is funded by a combination of state and local taxes. And how the local taxes work is we assume a 60 mil contribution on their taxable valuation. And then we assume, or then there's a 75% deduct for all those in lieu of property tax categories that were discussed earlier. So when a school district is unable to get to 60 mils because of this new 3% cap in that general fund 60 mil levy, the formula is still going to assume they're at 60. Ultimately, they won't get their full funding of the $11,000 per student that the legislature promised. So there is going to be an application period for school districts. If they max out their mill levy authority, they go up their full 3% from their adjusted base year or their adjusted year levy, or their base year levy or their adjusted year levy, and they still can't get to 60, we will put out an application process so that then we'll use our integrated state aid payment to make that school district whole to ensure they're at that $11,000 per student. The 3% cap is calculated across all the mill levies that the school district has the authority to levy. They could do it in the general fund, the miscellaneous fund, building fund. But because this 60 mills is so unique, because it does tie it directly into how much state aid that school district gets, it is a requirement that at least that 60 mills goes up the full 3% allowable that would drive that down. So it's not going to allow a school district to go up 3% overall in their budget and maybe increase their miscellaneous mills 10 and decrease that general fund 60 down to 52. That would make them ineligible for that gap funding. They do need to make that 60 mills go up 3% above the adjusted year levy or that base year levy. To be eligible, you also had to levy 60 mills in the previous year. They did add a caveat onto that if a school district attempted to get to 60 mills, we have 3 or 4 school districts in the state that were at 58.5 or 59 mills. We are going to allow those school districts still to be eligible. But once we start getting down to that, they only levied 55 or less mills. Those school districts will not be eligible for that gap funding. And the reason that was put in, I know we had the conversation earlier with when those tax values changed, and it's kind of estimated up until October to when the actual numbers do come in. If the school district was trying to levy exactly at that 60 mil mark and there was a small change in that valuation, they may have ended up with less than 60 mils. So we will be communicating with school districts, working on a form for them to apply that would show that they maxed out their mill levy, especially on that 60 mil side, and that they're not, shifting from one to another. So the bill does require that those increases must be done proportionately across all the mills. Again, my main focus is making sure the 60 mills is proportionally to all the rest of the eligible mills that are under the cap. Again, we wouldn't include the tuition fund or any district indebtedness levies as part of that proportional calculation. And with that, I can stand for any questions. Quick, sorry. Got you ahead of schedule.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes.
Matt, I just wanted to make one comment about that. So God bless you, school district business managers that have to run these numbers all the time. And thank you, Adam. And then just to comment to running those numbers, I guess it's more important than ever that we all stay in communication with each other and work together, especially working through these first couple of years. Share as much as you can back and forth. And I kind of wondered if did Katie leave? Okay, the tax director's in here. Is it a possibility that something could be posted, or the values could be posted and or emailed, somehow provided to the political subdivisions as you have a pretty good idea, like say by the end of June and then again by the end of July with the centrally assessed, somehow, or you're going to get 5 phone calls from the school and you're going to get 10 phone calls from the cities. And I'm just trying to think if there's a more efficient way. And you don't need to answer, just planting that seed.
So we're going to get right to it, but we have Linda Swyhoven.